Hey chaps. Today, just chatting a little bit about how coaches grade players and how, as a player, you can improve your stock within a team. I remember after high school, when I was in the academy system in South Africa, being very frustrated not being able to crack the A side. But I was only thinking from my own ego, my own point of view. I couldn't understand what the coaches were looking for, and perhaps it was a communication issue as well from the coaches of not being able to tell me why I wasn't being selected above certain other players, or why certain other players were better suited to playing A side than I was. But the reality is there is a objective metric of grading player performances. And so understanding this really gives you a lot of peace of, wow, okay, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I wasn't being unfairly treated. I was simply not as good as some of the other guys. Now, there were things I could have worked on. I did not work as hard athletically that I could have. I didn't work on my skills as much as I could have. And with my mindset, there were certain areas or fears that I did not overcome. I wasn't as aggressive as other players, or I wasn't as determined as other players. There are very real metrics that we can objectively look at to improve ourselves as players and to understand why or why not we are being selected. I enjoy this quote from Heraclitus. Out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are just targets, 9 are the real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. What we're seeing here is the principles of domination. Who are the ones dominating the field of play, the field of battle? There are, in any squad, in any team of players, those who are more dominant than the others. And there are those who are dominated by the others. And so it is this rubric that we will look at and come to understand how to accurately grade players. I've been studying a lot into how the football recruiters scout players. What are they looking for? How do they measure it? And so here are a few screenshots I've taken of football recruiters and the metrics that they use. And when I stumbled upon this, I was like, wow, this makes so much sense in how you can appropriately grade players. Because you'd always read in the papers after big games, Springboks played New Zealand, here's the player ratings. This guy was an 8 out of 10 and this guy was a 6 out of 10. It's like, well, how do you measure that other than your feels? But actually you can objectively measure the impacts that they make in a game. For instance, take a flanker and look at all of his tackles. Okay, he made 20 tackles. He only missed 2 tackles. So that's 20 positive impacts, 2 negative impacts. Made so many carries, so many ruck cleans. You can attribute points, kind of a point system, to the amount of impacts that a player has in the game. And that's why it's really funny, everyone jokes about the GOAT, Andy Good, coming out of retirement, a bit overweight, totally unfit probably. But how can a player like this be offered a contract out of retirement? It's because he was very good at his impacts in the game, at what he did. He was very good at controlling field position. He had a great boot. He could kick points reliably. He could drive a team around a field. And so he could, as an older, unathletic player, still command or dominate a field, which makes it really funny when you look at certain players who perhaps don't look the part, or people are surprised that they are selected. It's because you can measure their positive impacts on the game. Here's some more football recruiting metrics. You often hear in American sports, oh, this kid's a 5-star recruit, or this kid's a 4-star recruit. I always wondered, again, how did they measure that? But they have, a 5-star player. These players demonstrate rare abilities and can create mismatches that have an obvious impact on the game. These players have all the skills to take over a game and could make a possible impact as true freshmen. They should also push for All-American honors, with the potential to have a 3-and-out college career with early entry into the NFL draft. And then a 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, etc. Now, obviously, rugby is not at the place to have an industry around recruiting high school players. And so this is far more going to apply to your own team, your own squad of 20 to 50, 60 players, however many players you have in your high school or college team or club team. We can assess our player group along these lines. You know, in our player group, for instance, our player group this year was about 60 odd players. Which players in our group of 60 demonstrate rare abilities and can create mismatches that have an obvious impact on the game? And as a player, you want to ask yourself, what can I do to demonstrate rare ability or pick up certain skills or attributes that are rare? And can I create mismatches in a game? I had a recruit reach out to me with game film. He was a very big tight head prop. Big boy, obviously struggled to get around the field very quickly. But every time he carried the ball, he would take in 2 or 3 defenders, and he would always get over the gain line. And obviously his scrummaging was solid. His set piece work was good. His defense around the fringe was good. But his rare ability is the ability to catch the ball, get over the gain line, and suck in 3 defenders every time. And so what I told this young chap was, in order to become a dominant player, someone who is a 4 or 5 star player in comparison to the rest of your team or the rest of your league, you need to do your rare ability, you need to do your dominant skill twice as much as you've been doing it before. So I counted up in the film that he sent me, he carried the ball 6 times. And he carried that ball, every time he carried that ball over the gain line and sucked in defenders. I said to him, 6 times is okay for what you're doing. But you need to figure out in your work rate, in your mindset, your attitude, you need to get onto the ball 12 times in a game. And then you will be a dominant player. And so what is it in your player group? If you're a coach, you need to identify in your player group what are their specific skill sets that they are very good at. How can they do it twice as much in a game? How can they become conscious of doing it twice as much in a game? If I remember correctly, I read an article, I think it was on Duan van der Merwe, the Scottish winger. His whole aim in a game is to carry the ball every 3rd to 4th phase. If he's not carrying the ball every 3rd to 4th phase in a game, he's not giving his value. And we have to think of that. I'm not a jack of all trades player who can do a little bit of everything. It's okay to be like, this is the one thing I'm good at. I'm going to try and do it as much as possible. And obviously you want to generate a bit of, everyone has to be able to tackle. But if you're a dominant tackler, go be the guy who makes the tackle, the big dominant tackle, every 2nd or 3rd phase. Everyone has to learn to carry the ball well. But if you're a dominant carrier, go carry the ball every 3 or 4 phases. If you've got an excellent boot, get in a place where that boot is helping your team and you're using it as much as possible. If you've got a really good pass, get in a position where you can make the most passes in a game, etc., etc. With all of that being said, here's how I grade my college squad and potential recruits coming into my college squad. A 5-star is obvious and consistent A-side dominance. So there are players who, every time the A-side runs on and plays against another A-side in our league, there are players who are dominant, who are obviously dominant and consistently dominant throughout the game, throughout the season. They are your 5-star players. Your 4-star players are occasionally A-side dominant. So in the A-side game, they'll show little glimpses of dominance, occasionally dominating scenarios or other players, but it's not consistent. And so in order to go from a 4-star to a 5-star, you'll want to develop consistency. And a lot of times it's just doubling up on the things that you're good at. If you can carry the ball twice as much or tackle twice as much, if that is your dominant thing that you do. A 3-star, occasionally outmatched in an A game, they are consistently dominant in the B-side games. A 2-star, consistently outmatched in A games, but occasionally dominant in B games. And then a 1-star, they're occasionally outmatched in a B game, but they have consistent dominance in a C game. Most freshmen will grade in as 2-star and 3-star players. They will play B-side and C-side, and you're looking for that dominance in that setting. We'll play A-side, B-side, C-side every weekend. If a player is consistently dominating B-side, they'll be promoted to the A-side. If a player is struggling in the B-side, they get demoted to the C-side. It's all about finding your level and then looking to improve. The transition from being a multi-year starter or even the best player on your high school team to playing 2nd or 3rd side for your college team can be a blow to your ego. I mean, that was me. I started in my high school 1st side for 2 years. Probably in my high school and the league we played in, I was probably a 4 or 5 star player. And then you get to academy, or here in the States it would be the college level, and you're just not as good as all the older players, especially who have had a few years to put on athletic ability and hone their skills and play under pressure and just become cleverer, wiser players. You're not as good as them, and it's a blow to your ego. You will quickly realize your teammates and opponents are several years stronger, sharper, and wiser. But if you're diligent about improving your game, it is realistic to improve a grade star every season and be a contributor on the first side by sophomore or junior year. Take time to speak with your coaches about what you could improve on, not just your skill set, but your attitude too. Put in the work regardless of what team you're playing on. This was my struggle. My ego had taken a blow. I was disappointed I wasn't in the first side, struggling to maintain a good attitude, a good work rate at practice and in the gym. I was sulking, basically, moping around, And I went and apologized to my coach for my attitude, tried to get my attitude back on, but I didn't know how to improve. I didn't know how to get on the A side. So there was a knowledge issue there. You can and should know where and how your coach wants you to improve in each area. The specific areas you need to work on are athleticism, skill, and mindset. So let's go into each of those three. Athleticism is mass plus speed plus impacts. Are you stronger, faster, more involved than the other players in your position? Obviously, some players are going to be more on the huge, big mass side, and some players are going to be on the faster, agile, quicker side. But if you can improve both at your scale, so if you're a prop, yes, you want to increase your muscle mass, increase your size, your strength, your power. But if you can add a bit of speed to that, if your 10-meter dash, if you can have acceleration and speed, it makes you more dangerous. And likewise, if you're a winger or a scrum half, you're very small, you're agile, you're quick. If you can add some muscle mass to your game, if you can add 10, 15 pounds to your frame, it will make you a better player. And then impacts. Being more involved than other players. You can be the best player on your team, but if you're only making 6 carries a game, your impacts, you're not as athletic as everyone else because you're not having as many impacts. So if you can get fitter, and if you can get to the impacts more often, it means getting up off the floor, getting back in position, and carrying again, or tackling again, or whatever role you're performing. Impacts is how you display your athleticism. You can be the most athletic guy in the field, but if you aren't touching the ball or being involved a lot, that athleticism is just good looks. It's just, oh, it looks good, but he actually doesn't do anything. There's many players you could identify as that. I remember there was a great specimen of a Springbok player back in the 2000s who was just a absolute Adonis of a man. But a lot of people would call him the ruck inspector because he liked to carry the ball. He didn't like to make the big hits or do the dirty work of the carries. And, credit to him, he knew what he was good at and he just tried to do that as many times as possible. But there comes a time when if you really want to go to the next level, you have to make as many impacts in as many areas as possible. So the question you need to be asking your coach, that you need to be doing your own research on, you need to be asking better players or reaching out to people who are where you want to be. What can you do to improve your athleticism? Gym plans, nutrition plans, practice plans, drills, exercises. Are you doing the stuff that is needed to be the better athlete? You could probably grade yourself right now compared to your team or your league that you're playing in. Are you a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5-star athlete? I was probably a 3-star athlete in my high school league. I could have worked so much harder in the gym. I could have eaten better. That would have made me a far, far better player because I didn't rely on my athleticism as a player. But you want to max out your athleticism. It's something that every player can do. And of course, there's talent levels, right? Some players are 10 talent men, some are 1 talent men. But whatever not everyone's born 6'6", 250 pounds. So whatever your level is, if you're 5'6", 150 pounds, you need to work at your level, but are you maxing out what God has given you? The second area to improve is skill. Skill is positional requirements plus model mechanics plus reps under pressure. There are specific positional requirements or functions that you need to master to dominate at your position. Define what is it that I'm expected to do in my position and get good at it. And then model the mechanics and mannerisms of the best in the business. As a teenager in high school, my hero, my model, was Maononu, the New Zealand centre. He was an absolute beast. I would watch hours and hours and hours of highlight clips on his game. And then in my head, at practice, when I was playing touch with my friends, and then when it came to a game, I would model him. I would pretend that I was Maononu. I would try and run like him. I would try and step like him. I would try tackle like him. I would try pass like him. And I do believe it improved my game because I could see a better way of playing the game. So model the mechanics and mannerisms of the best in the business, the best in your position. Then practice it under increasing pressure scenarios, right? You want to get reps under pressure. So it's not good enough just to stationary pass. It's good to practice your pass and do 50 to 100 reps of just stationary one-handed passing. But then do it under pressure. You want to do 2v1s and 3v2s with your friends where there's pressure of actually being tackled or hit with a bag. You want to do little game scenarios. You want to put some pressure and some stakes on the skill that you are training. If you're kicking for poles, do it with a friend and say, let's put a wager on it. Let's go 10 kicks each, and the loser has to, drink a raw egg. I don't know, whatever you guys want to do, but put stakes on things, right? Make it fun for you to practice your skills under pressure. And then the third area of the game to improve on is your mindset. This is the kind of intangible. You can see a player's athleticism, you can see a player's skills. The intangible is the mindset, which is wisdom, desire, and positivity. Wisdom is making good decisions. The more you study and practice scenarios, the better and faster decisions you can make. So you often see players, they'll make a break, and then they'll mess up the 3v2 or the 2v1 after that break. That's a wisdom issue. They didn't make the right decision quickly enough. And that comes from studying, well, what do we do when you break the line? And then, you've got to practice those scenarios again. It all comes again to reps under pressure, but it becomes a wisdom issue of, are we doing the right thing at the right time at the right place? That's a wisdom issue. And that comes from just watching and playing as much rugby as you can. Play as much touch rugby as you can. Play as much summer sevens as you can. Play as much pickup club rugby as you can. Like, if there's an opportunity to play rugby, it's going to increase your wisdom. If there's an opportunity to watch rugby, it's going to increase your wisdom. Watch the players that you're modeling. It's going to increase your wisdom of making good decisions faster. And then desire is a huge issue. The desire to empty the tank, the desire to be the best, the desire to dominate the rest. I struggled a bit with this as a player. I played scared. A lot of the games I would have a bit of fear coming in until I would make my first hit, and then it's like, okay, it's done. You can calm down, you can get in the game. You have to get to a place where you are beating your fears. If you're afraid of tackling, well, then let's sort that out. You need to be training how to tackle better. You need to be training how to face the fears that you have. If you're afraid of catching a ball under pressure, if you're afraid of making a long pass or a pressure kick, then you have to get to a place where you're training through your fears. But that comes from a desire to dominate your fears, and then a desire to go and win, a desire to be the best, to work on your craft, to dominate the rest. There's a lot of players when you ask them, can you play this position? And they'll be like, no, not really, don't think I can. And then other players will be like, yeah, I'll do anything to get on the field. That's a desire issue. Do you desire to get on the field and be the best and do what it takes? And then positivity, confident body language and talk. Blamers, complainers, and drainers get dropped. A huge part of being in a team sport is being a likable team contributor. And again, not likable in that you have to please everybody and everyone has to like you, but in that you're likable because you're adding to the group. Everybody likes the guy, going back to that Heraclitus quote, the one warrior who brings the rest of them back. Are you adding to the group? You're not just coasting or being carried by the team. No one likes guys who they have to carry. And blamers, complainers, and drainers, it's worse than having to be carried. You're purposefully dragging others down and draining the team. Be confident in your body language. Again, watch your models. Watch the pros who are positive body language, positive body movement. Don't drop your head when you make a mistake. Don't sulk or blame or complain. It's a game, right? We're all going to make mistakes. The pros make mistakes. Dust yourself off, get back on your horse. And then confident talk. Don't demean yourself. Don't be self-deprecating. Don't blame others and criticize others and swear at others. Be a positive talker. If someone makes an unintentional mistake, instead of cussing them out, encourage them. Just say, hey, get back on your horse. Let's fix it. That's positive. But launching into someone who's made an unintentional mistake, it's not helping anyone. Now, if someone purposefully messes up and they purposefully throw the game plan, of course, lay into them. But that shouldn't be anybody on your team. No one's going out there intentionally to drop the ball or intentionally to slip a tackle. We want to be positive talkers.